Extra 2, The Real John Piper, New Calvinism for Dummies. Okay, at the beginning of this clip, I want to back up a little bit and address this comment that he made in this video about Doug Wilson and why he was inviting him. And I just want to touch on this shortly. This whole notion amongst New Calvinists that if you're really preaching the gospel, that it's going to invoke this charge of antinomianism, that you're teaching antinomianism, and that's why his point is that, you know, how Doug Wilson presents the gospel is, quote, risky. All right? Because if you're doing it the right way, it's going to invoke the charge of antinomianism. Well, as I pointed out in another clip, really it's not even antinomianism. The word antinomianism isn't even in Romans 6:1. And, you know, there's no doubt that the New Calvinism is a form of antinomianism, but not in the way that they present it. But at any rate, I think this is telling and worth mentioning before we move on. Okay, this is the money clip on this, and this same quote was addressed in the other clip. What we're going to address here is this whole idea that there's a future judgment because our justification has to be maintained throughout sanctification, and then we need to be found just with Christ's righteousness at the final day, or the last day, as John Piper put it, is based on this whole interpretation of Romans 8:30 that was the very crux of the awakening movement that then led to the development and the founding of the Australian Forum, from which all of this doctrine came from. So what we're going to look at next is how this view of Romans 8:30 and this golden chain approach works. I just wanted to add in this frame quickly as a citation for my comment about this view of Romans 8:30 launching the awakening movement, which led to the Australian Forum, and here from The Truth About New Calvinism, pages 32 and 33, we have an account that was taken from an article written by someone who was a first-hand witness to the awakening movement. Okay, we'll take a quick look at in the New Calvinism for Dummies series. In one of the series, I go into this in detail, this whole golden chain of salvation take from New Calvinist, and this is a term, the golden chain of salvation, that have been used by other folks of old in the Reformed movement, but it's not the same definition. The way New Calvinists use this whole golden chain of salvation approach is in regard to their interpretation of Romans 8:30, which is sanctification is missing from the subject matter of that verse because it's the same thing as justification. You can look under the gold chain there, see the reference in which this was taken from, but clearly Piper teaches, like all New Calvinists, that sanctification is part of this continuous chain. This is clear. which makes my point then that sanctification is a link that completes salvation. Alright? This is the terminology that he uses. Sanctification are links that connect salvation to glorification. This is a huge theological problem because it makes sanctification a minefield as far as doing our part just right so as not to mess up justification. And this is the huge problem with New Calvinistic theology. So this is this whole golden chain concept, which is very valuable in linking other folks to New Calvinism as well, like Ernest Reisinger, the founder of Founders Ministries, that brought this doctrine so strongly into Southern Baptist circles. Okay, this is orthodoxy. Basically, when you believe all your past and future sins are forgiven and glorification is guaranteed, nothing we do in sanctification can add to that or take away from it. It's totally separate. Okay? So the new birth makes our co-laboring with God possible in sanctification, but it's totally separate from justification. Justification is a finished work. But again, if the two are fused, if it's like the Australian Forum says, that sanctification is, and I quote, justification in action, you get into the problems that I mentioned earlier. Alright, when the two are fused, you can only get into two different things. Christ plus our efforts to finish justification, or because the law is the standard for justification and we have to be found perfectly righteous at this supposed day of judgment that's awaiting us. Well then, as you can see in the top, you get antinomianism, because that means Christ has to keep the law for us, right? Okay? So this chart was made to illustrate that when you fuse justification and sanctification together, only two bad results can result. And that is Christ plus our own efforts to complete justification. Good luck. Or, okay, obviously we can't complete our own justification, so I know Christ keeps the law for us. However, I've had a change of thinking on this chart, and it's the following. Both are work salvation. When justification and sanctification are fused together, you run into the problem that something has to be done by us to, as John Piper put it, properly maintain the links between justification and glorification. So basically what you have is, either by doing nothing or doing something, you're behaving yourself and doing something just right to complete justification. But both are works. It's either works by doing nothing, because you're a participant in completing justification, or it is completing it by your works, which is Christ plus something In other words, works salvation. It is my contention, therefore, that New Calvinism is works salvation by antinomianism. And that's my contention. Now, in the third part of this, on John Piper coming up, we're going to discuss an important issue and demonstrate it here. This whole attitude towards eschatology. Now, the Holy Spirit says in the Scriptures, and the Apostle Paul certainly emphasized it, that the whole teaching, the whole counsel of God is critical. And many churches today downplay the importance of eschatology. Oh, well, now, brother, everybody agrees Jesus is coming back. We don't need to get into splitting hairs and all of these semantics and trying to figure out exactly how it all goes down. I was in a New Calvinist church that was reformed before that. It was a Reformed church that then turned into a New Calvinist church. And I can tell you this, there was one message on eschatology in literally 20 years. And that was one sermon out of the book of Daniel. And then at some point I did a Sunday school series on Revelation. All right. Here's what we're going to look at in the next clip. If you don't understand eschatology in regard to justification, you're dead in the water. In essence, New Calvinists have set up a framework that has dumbed down Christians in regard to eschatology, and that is why, by and large, that Christians of our day are helpless and hopeless in understanding where they're being deceived by this doctrine. Okay? And we're going to be looking at that in the next clip, and primarily in regard to judgments, last day judgments, in regard to eschatology. And so on to the third clip. Thank you for listening.